All right, good morning, everybody. It's time to check in for Lecture 4. I hope everything is going well for everyone. I want to thank those of you who have contacted me with questions or about needing help. I think it can really make a big difference if you reach out when you need it. Some of us are doing really well, some of us are still struggling a little bit, and so I just want to encourage you once again to reach out. You're welcome to come see me during the office hours. We now have a couple of tests done. By the time you're watching this video, you probably have test 3 done as well. I still want to encourage you guys to use the testing center if at all possible. There's still some issues with some testing irregularities, and so of course you can use Respondus, but I just want to remind you that it's pretty important that you make sure that you do not have those testing irregularities. Okay. So as we move forward with lecture test 4, we're going to see a slight change here in that our last unit we had 1 chapter, and you notice we're jumping from 1 chapter, chapter 5, to 4 chapters. Now I know that may sound a little scary, but I just want to let you know that it's not as bad as it sounds. So really, more than anything, this test is going to be over mostly chapter 6 and mostly chapter 9, okay? Now, chapter 7 and 8, you can see that we just have a couple of objectives for each chapter. And if you are currently taking lab, you're going to find that you are going to be essentially doing chapter 7 and chapter 8 in the lab room. So you're going to be learning the bones of the axial skeleton, and you're going to be learning the bones of the appendicular skeleton. And so that's really what those 2 chapters are over, is just kind of going over those 2 components or those 2 divisions of the skeletal system. And so because we are covering that very heavily in lab, we're not really going to go into a great detail in lecture. So we have just a small amount of information that you have to know, but like I said, if you're in lab, you're learning that already there. So you will see some test questions though, so make sure you are watching the videos, doing the practices, taking the quizzes. Now chapter 6 is going to be, to me, kind of a tough one. It's very detailed. There's a lot of objectives, and some of these objectives are pretty technical. So I would definitely encourage you to practice and watch videos, and I'm not even just talking about my videos where I'm going through the PowerPoint. I would also encourage you to watch videos that I've attached at the end of the PowerPoints, things like crash courses or other videos about some of these processes, because they can be pretty technical. So you can see that we have 5 possible essays here. From chapter 6, there's 4 different types of bone cells. They start with osteo, okay? So you have like osteocytes and osteoblasts and osteoclast, and then osteogenic cells. And so that one's not too terribly hard, just kind of focus on what they do and how they're different. You have one from chapter 7 about the vertebra column. And so in chapter 7, it's just going to be looking at things like the cervical vertebra, thoracic vertebra, lumbar vertebra, and then you have your sacrum and your coccyx. We have another one from chapter 6. That's going to be the 5 ways bones are classified, and I'm going to encourage you to maybe star that one. That's definitely something that you need to know. And then name the 2 major ways that joints can be classified. So joints can be a little bit confusing because they are very vocabulary heavy. Then we have the names of the joints and the subtypes of the joints, and so in the video over joints, I'll kind of go over that and point out what you need to do for that essay. And then you also have the 6th type of synovial joints, and so we'll take a look at that in chapter 9 as well. So you have 5 possible essays here, so just be sure that you are preparing for those. One of the questions that I got was, how do I prepare for the essays? And so what I would encourage you to do is, number 1, find where they are in the notes. And number 2, kind of maybe practice, outline. In my opinion, reading is not always the best method of studying. Some people are able to read and absorb, but most people, what you're really doing is you're just scanning with your eyes and not necessarily learning anything. You can read something over and over again, but if you don't make sense of it, it's not going to stick in your brain. So I would encourage you to maybe practice writing these out, not necessarily long essay format, but just kind of jotting down the answers. I like to think in flow charts and bullets and outlines. But just, I would definitely prepare for these, and however that is going to be helpful to you. Everybody studies in different ways, but I would definitely kind of write them out prior to the test so that you kind of feel ready. And then study those. And like I said, if you're studying these essay questions, you're also studying for those multiple choice questions up here. We do have word bits as always, and so you will see these word bits on your test as well. Okay, so that's going to take care of our things to know, and let's just take a quick look at our Moodle. So here's our due date. Okay, everything for lecture test 4 is going to be due on the 21st. So we're going to stick with our Mondays pretty much all the way up until the semester exam. Your due dates are going to be on Monday. So we have our things to know, which we just went over. We have, let's see, we have only 2 sets of notes because over here is chapter 7, 8, and 9. Once again, you don't have a whole lot on chapter 7 and 8. This time, the videos, links that I included in the PowerPoints. You have your lecture recordings, and I'm going to be updating chapter 9. You have your study materials as always, some practice materials, and this is something I want to encourage you guys to do as well. If you're not doing practice, I know that it's not for a grade. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do that. Because a lot of the times the more exposure you can get to possible test questions and the types of questions that you're going to see on the test, the better off you're going to be. And so I would encourage you to kind of use your notes and go through these, or maybe try to take them without your notes and see how you do, and then go back and study those areas where you didn't do too well. You have a practice test, you have these little quick quizzes that you can do, but practice, practice, practice. If you really want to know if you know something, you got to test yourself, okay? We have a few different graded activities for this unit. You have a little labeling the long bone, and then you have your typical chapter quizzes. So there's one over chapter 6, there's one over 7, 8, and 9, and then there's one over just chapter 9. And then as always, we have our 2 possibilities for our test. And once again, I just want to really encourage you to, if at all possible, take it in the testing center. Because we have had some issues with irregularities. I don't want to give students zeros, but if these flags keep popping up, or if there's a question about academic dishonesty, there's a very good chance that you could get a 0 on a test. And so please make sure that you are being very diligent about taking your test honestly, with no distractions, no irregularities or red flags, okay? So that's all for lecture test 4. Pretty much we just have the same routine as always. Let me know if you need any help or have any questions, and I wish you guys the best on the next lecture section. Y'all have a great one.